Hi everyone, we're here today with Jessie Bennett. Jessie is the chair of the High School Traffic Working Group. They had a meeting on June 13th and then a follow-up meeting on July 12th to discuss some suggestions that came from a study by the BSC Group that looked at traffic around mainly the schools. Can you talk a little bit about what area they were looking at and kind of what they found in the study?
Yeah, so we contracted with BSC Group. The town's engineer, head of the Office of Community Development, Glenn Clancy, chose BSC Group to be the consultant on this project because they had already done the townwide traffic study. They were familiar with some of the existing issues in the area, and they have a real engineering approach to the ideas that they come up with. So having an engineer look at it and try to come up with options that would work seemed like the best way forward. We had Sam Fiato, who is our consultant at BSC Group, look at the entire area from Concord Avenue up to Washington Street, and then from Common Street all the way over to Bright Road. And so with the key focus being this kind of knot that happens at Godin and School Street, but also just looking at what the infrastructure problems are in that neighborhood and trying to solve a couple of really thorny problems for us, or at least come up with some ideas for solving those problems.
Can you go a little bit more into depth about what some of those things that they focused on were?
So one of the things that Sam focused on was the accessibility of the sidewalks, and were there protected sidewalks all along these key school routes that go to Wellington, that go to Chenery, that go to Burbank, and that go to the new 7 to 12 campus. So there are a lot of issues with the sidewalks all over town, and so it's no surprise that there are issues in this neighborhood. On the Safe Routes to School Townwide Committee, we've noted some of these issues for years. That many of the sidewalks are very narrow. There's some places where they're non-existent. There's some places where they're so pushed up by roots from the trees that they're not really passable without real little. You can't pass them, especially if you're riding if you're in a wheelchair, if you have a scooter,
or
if
you have
kid bike, or exactly. So and again, a problem that we have all over town. We're taking a moment to focus on this neighborhood, out of under the auspices of the High School Traffic Working Group, because it's going to be impacted by the new school. So we want to make sure that we're looking ahead and preparing for the increase in traffic that we would see there. So one of the suggestions had to do with the intersection at Godin and School Street, and that's probably the single suggestion that is kind of the trickiest one to address. It's a really, it's an offset intersection. I think a lot of people have probably driven through there. They know how odd it is. It kind of goes off in a weird jog as you're heading
up with each other,
southbound on Godin, and it kind of goes on to School Street for a little bit. So our consultant looked at that and said the key problem there is that you want to make that intersection into a real box. The only way he could see that would solve that, that could work in the long run, was to take this one stretch of Godin Street from School Street up to where Orchard connects with it, and turn that into a one-way section. So it would just be one-way southbound, so you wouldn't have any approaching traffic to that intersection on that one stretch of Godin. But when you squeeze a balloon, it tries to get out. It goes into other places. It goes. So we know that if we did make that change, that would then route traffic onto Orchard Street, going westbound over to Common, and on Orchard Street going eastbound over to School Street. And that's not a perfect solution either. So we've got to look at, we've asked our consultant after the July 12th meeting, we're asking him to go back and look at it and see if we can maybe come up with any other ideas that might help us deal with that intersection. He was also looking at turn restrictions coming off of Concord Avenue to kind of limit some of the traffic during key times of day on these side streets, to encourage motorists to stick to Common Street or go over to Bright. Again, we have to make sure that doesn't impact other streets, that people aren't trying to wiggle their way past Burbank to avoid any tie-ups, for instance, down on Concord or on Bright Road. So it's just a matter of making sure, and then of course the Leonard Street Bridge is already not a great intersection. So, and we know that if that backs up too much, then we're backing up all the way to the stoplight at Concord and Godin that will be going in there. So it is a tricky issue. There's already really high volumes of traffic, not just in Belmont, but in all of the inner ring suburbs. This is a regional problem. But we have to try to make our neighborhoods as livable and as safe as we possibly can for all residents.
Sure.
So, and all users of the roads and sidewalks. So.
Yeah, and so this is an ongoing thing. It's nothing is set in stone yet. They're kind of just throwing out suggestions right now. You said that there's going to be a follow-up meeting about some of these things that they found and some of the suggestions that they have, so people can kind of stay up to date on what's going on there and give their feedback at some of those meetings probably.
Absolutely, and people can send emails to myself, Jessie Bennett at gmail.com. If they want to get in touch with the committee, they can also get in touch with Glenn Clancy at the Office of Community Development. And we'll be taking people's feedback all through this process. We had a lot of people show up at the July 12th meeting, and I was really encouraged to see the engagement. The last thing I want to see is for our committee to be like, well, that looks like a great idea, based on the limited amount of feedback we were getting, and then for people to feel blindsided by something. So we're trying to be as transparent as possible and try to get as much feedback as we possibly can. So that meeting, we haven't set it yet, but it will be probably in September.
Awesome.
It will give us an opportunity to get some of this feedback back to our consultant, get some responses from him, maybe some new ideas, and see where we can go from there.
Great. And in the meantime, people can stay up to date with what happened at the past 2 meetings by going to Belmont Media Center's website and watching those meetings in their entirety. And hopefully people will stay tuned and show up for some of those meetings and take advantage of the opportunity to give their input.
And they can see the entire presentation from the June 13th meeting on the Town of Belmont website, and we are almost up to date on all our minutes there too. So,
Awesome.
But again, I'm happy to talk with people about their concerns.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming in today to talk about this.
Thank you so much.
I think it affects a lot of people. So with that, we will move on.